Okay, we're about to go to Christian Leurprecht now, as we tried to do that earlier, to talk about the broader situation. Christian, you were just describing why Germany may be the object of a Daesh attack.
Well, it's the most populous, it's the largest country within Europe, the largest economy within Europe. But I think the interesting question is why Germany has so far been relatively spared these types of attacks. In Munich, then the question, of course, as with Nice, why in Munich? Munich, of course, being a major hub, it's easy to get in and out of Munich. And so if you want to attract attention, you would certainly be able to attract much more global media attention in Munich than you would in, for instance, some small town somewhere. Plus, Munich is also one of the 4 or 5 or so media centers within Germany. So if terrorists are always looking for media coverage, so if you're trying to maximize your media coverage, then inherently this would be one of the places you would want to strike. And
the Munich police have confirmed that they believe it is a terrorist attack. Just looking at all the various bits of information that have come out about the multiple gunmen and evacuating the train station, closing the metro and so on, what is it about the attack that makes them believe it is not just a criminal activity, but a terrorist one?
Well, so there's something interesting about the fact that they did it on a Friday night, because of course lots of people would have left for the weekend. So if you want to catch the security forces sort of off guard, then a Friday night would probably be an optimal timing in terms of trying to navigate and try to get away if you're trying to escape and after this type of attack. So I think that in itself is interesting, aside from the timing, of course, to optimize and to maximize impact on populations, especially sort of downtown in the pedestrian zone. The pedestrian zone would be an obvious symbolic target. Anybody who's been to Munich and who's been to the city hall, who's watched the chimes on the Marienplatz, will be well aware of its centrality. And it appears that the shooting happened at the Jagdmuseum, or the initial shooter was at the Jagdmuseum, which is halfway between Marienplatz and Stachus Karlsplatz, which are sort of the 2 major squares that connect that large pedestrian zone. Why someone would want to target the shopping center, whether that's a symbolic or a deliberate target, but indeed, as your other correspondent pointed out, the 2 are not far away from one another. And I think it's the coordinated, premeditated fashion, the fact that there's multiple attackers, the timing of the attack, all of these I think would suggest that initially police, based on their reporting, had treated as sort of someone who had run amok and was perhaps just shooting about themselves, and now I think the coordinated fashion has led them to change the nature of the investigation and the intervention. But at the moment you also upgrade the type of intervention, you now have completely different resources at your disposal, because, for instance, the federal government has sent its domestic rapid intervention force, GSG 9, GSG 09, which is sort of so in addition to, police are organized on a state level in Germany because it's a federal country, and so the police resources belong to the states. But the federal government has a surge capacity with special intervention units, and this particular unit is used extremely rarely. So the fact that they have been called in suggests that there's major concern, but you probably had to change the nature of the investigation and the nature of this type of event in order to be able to draw on federal resources to surge your capacity. And Munich police are clearly overwhelmed, or rather I should say the Bavarian police, because the police belong to the state, not to the city per se, because they've called in resources from across the state of Bavaria. So this suggests that this is a major event.
Okay. Now, we had earlier in the week Germany's interior minister telling Germans to expect more terrorist attacks after the one that happened on Monday. Now, the Daesh group claimed that one. Investigators are not still clear about that. They suspect it could be lone wolf. What do you think in this instance? Do you think it has recognizable hallmarks of a particular terrorist group?
Well, I think we should be careful to ascribe it to any one particular terrorist group. Of course, there's multiple terrorist organizations who have operated and continue to operate within Europe. But the pattern appears to have a terrorist pattern hallmark, and the fact that the Interior Ministry warned Germans, I mean, that probably is based on the one hand to make sure Germans are sensitive to the issue, but also probably based on intelligence, because after Paris, intelligence coordination within Europe improved substantially. And so when the Interior Minister makes these sorts of statements, it's a way also of putting the population on alert, and making sure that people then conduct themselves accordingly, because the most important thing here is that people follow instructions. So for instance, Bavarian authorities have asked people to leave the highways leading to Munich so that these reinforcements from elsewhere in the state can get through. And so you want to make sure that people are aware that when they hear these types of announcements, or when they hear to get off the streets, to stay at home, to not to go outside, that they can actually heed those particular instructions. And so in that regard, the Interior Minister's, the federal Interior Minister's message there was to put Germans on notice.
And what do you make of the Munich police advice for people not to post their pictures on social media because they fear that there could be other attackers who are watching those pictures and gaining intelligence from that?
Look, German authorities have been rehearsing for exactly this sort of events for months, because they knew it was only going to be a matter of time before Germany was going to be hit. I mean, that's at least what my friends and colleagues within the security services across the country were telling me when I spent several months there in the winter and spring. And so in that regard, I mean, this is in effect sort of the realization of that, and that security forces were fully prepared for that, and that they understand this sort of situation, especially when, unlike for instance in the attacks in France, when you don't yet have the perpetrator and you don't know how that person is armed, what else he or she may be up to, your effort needs to be to neutralize the threat. And so any information you provide these days, somebody with a mobile phone can use it as intelligence. So clearly you don't want to give the adversary any sort of advantage, and so it shows that this is part of what security forces call strategic communications.
I just want to bring somebody
effort to make sure you provide proper instructions.